Okay, hey everybody, it's 12 o'clock and we're going to start our regularly scheduled class. So today we are being filmed. So I prepared some special content for today, make it extra interesting. But I promised you that we would do convertible notes. So we're going to do that in the second half, right? Okay. After we duly impress everybody who's watching, then we get back to the regular things. Okay, so let's see who's here. Alex. Okay. Carolina. Nobody. Who showed up today? Clara.
Yeah, I think they're on the way.
Eric is here. Where's Eric? There he is. Felicia is not here. Gabriel. I'll get used to it. You got to give me time. It'll take some time. Jan, I think I saw Yan.
Yeah, he's here.
He's here. Jonathan Cohn. Not here yet. Joseph. Juliana is here. Larry is here. Laura is here. Mayor is not here. Maylee is not here. Norbert, not here. Norgo is here. Norgo. Yeah. That's Felicia. 1 second. Which one are you? Meyer, right.
Yes.
Thank you. And we didn't get to you yet. Okay. Maylee is here. Okay. Norbert. Not here yet. Not here. Rachel. Not. Rafaela is here. Samuel. And Tim is here. Anybody? Did I miss anybody? Who? No, it's not here yet. Okay, we'll get him. Anyway, okay, a couple of things. Why am I not doing? Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, team. The team issue has been settled. In fact, let me show what the teams are. So some people made teams and some people didn't. And some of the teams that were made were too big. So I rearranged things. I tried to respect the people who made teams. But since teams have 4, they now have, all teams have 3 people. Okay, so let's just see what it looks like. No, you can't see that. All right, okay. You know what? We'll do it in the break after this because I have to stop sharing my content. It's pain in the butt. Okay. The other question is, we're scheduled to end the last class. It's on June. On June 13th. Is that right? Okay, disagree with me? Last class on June 13th. Let's assume for a second that I'm right. It's not guaranteed. So let's assume, all right? That's what I have as the 14th class. You have a choice. You can either do the final exam on that day or a week later. Who votes for the last class? Who votes for a week later? Pretty even. Okay, so now comes that question of how lazy I am. All right, we'll get to it. Okay, so today, just as a reminder, we start at 12 o'clock. Okay? Okay, great. Oh, the light. Oh, we have to check the light. How do we check the light?
Sharing now or not? Because like they said, like, something on that screen.
Maybe there?
Oh.
No, wrong one. Oh, there we go. Okay. That's it. Okay, great. So today we're going to continue the discussion we ended off last time. And we're talking about funds and compensation, all kinds of different things. So today, what I really want to talk about is fund structure. All right, how do you structure a venture capital company or a venture capital fund, to be more accurate? Okay. Now, the truth is that if I asked you if you've never been in a venture fund, what would you say? It's a bank account, right? I mean, you have this organization and you put a bank account together, you put money into it, and the money goes out, right? No? What's your name?
Joseph. Joseph.
Joseph. So what do you think?
There's a couple of different entities that need to play a role.
So somebody read the material in the Moodle. Very good. Okay, so in fact, the venture capital fund is a much more complex organization. Before we get to it, last week I showed you one diagram of how venture capital works. I found a better one. And so I'm upgrading all of my images. Right? When I find a better image, I just take it. So this is a better diagram of how VC works. It's actually no different from the other diagram, except it looks better and it's a little better structured, right? So, and it fits better with what I want to talk about in terms of the 5 goals of the VC that we spoke about last week, right? So, since I already spoke about it last week, I'm not going to do it again, right? Because I already explained it. But what I want to get to is how a fund is actually structured, right? So when you think about it, there are different players, actors, as I call them, participants, whatever word you want, who are involved in the actual fund structure, okay? Now, these actors are the general partner, the limited partner, you have an operating company, you have the fund itself, and then you have the portfolio companies, right? So forget about this, because this is the way it looks, right? And what I want to do is go through this so it's understood, so it's clear. This, right, is the prequel to what you're going to be doing as a project later in the semester. Later in the semester, you're going to have to create a pitch deck for a venture fund. That's not news anymore because I've already said it a few times, right? And what we're not going to do today is talk about how to create an investment thesis, which is really going to be the main part of that exercise, right? Figuring out what the investment thesis is, and then building, some of the other parts that you need in order to create the fund. That's really what the exercise is. But this is going to be the beginning of how you understand how a venture fund is structured. And if you understand how a venture fund is structured, then when you get to that exercise, it'll be a little easier. Now, the good news is this class today is actually being filmed, right? Which means that the film, we don't usually film the class, right? The film will also, so when you want to, you'll be able to go back and review this. So let's see if we can figure out the parts. So I mentioned that there are 5 different actors, so to speak, here, right? So let's see if we can figure out who they are. Before we do that, we'll get back to this, right? So the first actor is the general partner. The GP, or general partner, that's the people, or those are the people that are the ones that are actually creating the fund. Nobody else does it, right? Remember we spoke about the 5 roles? So in the 5, we spoke about that last week, right? Right? Yeah, the 5 roles. So role number 1 is what? Fundraising. These are the people who have to do the fundraising, right? They're the founders of the fund, and they're called the general partner. Why are they called general partner?
But they make all the decisions. They're going to say they manage the fund.
Yeah, the truth is I don't really know. But since most companies, I'm kidding, since most companies are set up as partnerships, right? Either a limited liability partnership, either an LLC, a limited liability corporation, or a limited liability partnership, an LLP, or just a LP, a limited partnership. So there's the people who have operating responsibility, and authority, and the people who don't. And the people who have the authority and the responsibility are the general partners, right? Everybody else, when we see, we'll get to it, are limited partners. Limited means they don't do that, right? They don't have that responsibility. So the general partners are the ones who set up the fund. So if they're general partners, then where do they put their money? Remember, how much money do the general partners have to put into the fund?
1%.
1%, minimally, right? It could be 2%, could even be 3%, and a very early stage, a very first time fund, but generally it's 1%. Excuse me. So where do they put their money? Or they put it into an LLC. So far, these are people, right? People are not a limited liability corporation. They're not an LLC. So what they do is they set up an LLC that's called the general partnership. And that's this thing here. Now you can see the name is Junto, that is, whatever, General Partnership 1 LLC. Why is it 1?
Because it's the first fund.
Which means what?
The first time they're doing the fundraising and investing. And each fund
Because they may do it again, right? So the next time they set up a general partnership, if they keep the name, which they probably will, so it's called Junto General Partnership 2. In other words, what you see from that is everything is wholly contained, right? This fund is completely wholly contained within this fund. And all the participants are completely contained within the fund. If they wanted, if they're successful and they want to raise a second fund, then in the second fund, it won't go into here anymore. It'll go someplace else. None of this will be active in the second fund, almost. There's one thing that might be active in the second fund. Who knows what it might be? Huh?
LPs,
I can't hear.
limited partners.
No, they might go in again. What might be the same? Well, forget it. Never mind. It's the portfolio companies, right? In other words, Fund 1 might invest in portfolio company 1. Fund 2 might also invest in it later, right? Maybe not. In any case, and you're right, though. Some of the limited, it was a not clear question, because it's true. Some of the limited partners may invest in the second fund as well. But once you have a second fund, this sheet goes away and a new one is set up instead. Okay? So every fund is self-contained. So the first one is the general partners. The general partners put their money into an LLC that is for the general partnership. After that, who's next? The limited partners, right? So as a general partner, I have to raise money. We saw that last week. We have to do fundraising. So I go to all my limited partners or my potential limited partners trying to raise money, and people who want to contribute to the fund and who invest in it, they now will put their money where? Into the fund itself. This LLC or LP, limited partnership, right? So here, this is where everybody's going to put their money in. In other words, as a GP, I put my money into my general partnership LLC. But that money has to flow into the fund. So my contribution comes from my pocket to my LLC to the fund. The limited partners do the same thing. When they want to invest, they send money directly into the fund limited partnership, right? So again, legal entity, legal entity, legal entity. But as a general partner, I want to get paid. I want to get a salary. And I want to hire people who can work for me. And if I hire people who want to work for me, so now what I need is an operating company or a management company, depending on what you want to call it, right? Usually it's called an operating company. It's one of those two names, right? Either operator or management. In any case, this is who I work for. So when I get a paycheck, the paycheck I get comes from here. It doesn't come from this. This doesn't hire anybody. The fund, right? The limited partnership, the legal entity that is the fund, doesn't hire anyone. There are no employees there. The only thing it does is invest into portfolio companies. So whatever money comes into here, right, will flow into the companies, except for management fees. So we spoke about management fees. We're going to talk about it more. The management fees, the money I need in order to run the fund, gets transferred from here. Where does it come from? So the LPs contribute money to here, and we contribute money to here, and then management fees are transferred to the operating company. Okay? And the operating company is the one that hires people, rents an office, pays for marketing, pays for legal, whatever expenses it has comes out of here. Okay? As it says, back office salary expenses.
We have other funds, not just
But again,
that LLC, the second one, could have different funds. not
which
just
one?
The second one, the red one.
And
This? What about it?
It could have other funds.
Yeah. Okay. So now, the management company owns nothing. Right? All ownership is where it's here.
Who owns the management company?
These guys.
So they both own the management company and the partnership, GP.
So again, you're asking a good question, but let's go back. So why do we have this structure? Right? There are two reasons. This complicated or complex structure is set up for two reasons. We spoke about it last week, but the reasons are: one, tax minimization. The main thing you want to do when you set up a fund is avoid paying taxes as much as possible, which is impossible, right? You're going to have to pay tax. The question is how much, or better, how little, right? Despite the fact that you could theoretically make a lot of money, right? Personally, at the end of the day, right, the individual always has to pay tax. But the organization doesn't necessarily have to pay tax, right? In other words, I can set up a company in a place where there are no corporate taxes, right? These are called tax havens. You set it up, you pay your fees, nobody collects taxes from you. And that's why we do it in places that are tax havens, so that at least here, the profit is being protected. Sorry, here, right? The profit is being protected. The organization, you want to minimize the tax. Once you distribute it to the individuals have to pay tax, right? There's no way around it. Like we're the schmucks that get screwed. Everybody else makes a lot of money, okay? So that's reason number one. The other reason is limited liability. So how does that work? So if I'm an LP up here, right, and I put money into the fund, and the fund invested in portfolio company A, and portfolio company A gets sued for God knows what, bad stuff, right? Fraud, death, whatever it is, right? Causing somebody an accident. I'm like, I'm really sorry it happened, but don't talk to me. right? I have no responsibility for that. Why? Because I'm behind at least two corporate veils. The first corporate veil is the fund itself, but the second corporate veil is my relationship to it. I'm like, I have nothing to do with this, right?
What's a common used entity for LPs?
So again,
The LPs, what's the entity that they usually use to invest? It's
Say it
also an
again.
LLC.
which one?
The LP.
The LP. What about it?
What's the structure that they usually use?
Like, is it on the,
I don't understand.
The LP, the investor itself, uses a different LLC or what type of structure do you recommend?
The LPs are the people with the money who put the money into the fund. So they're investing into it, but they're not investing directly into the portfolio company, right? So if they're not, if I took my money and I put it into here, let's say I'm an angel investor, right? So an angel investor, I take my wallet out. Remember we spoke about this, and I make an investment directly into a company. Now I have to protect myself because I'm a direct owner of the company. I don't have a corporate veil to hide behind, right? I have a direct ownership stake in the company. These guys don't have a direct ownership stake at all, okay? And if I am an angel investor, I have to find a different way to protect myself. Like I also, by the way, all of these are going to be SPVs, special investment vehicles, right? Special purchase vehicles. So these are also going to be LLCs. So you have another layer of corporate veils that's protecting you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
For the LPs though, when they invest the money, are they doing it individually or are they doing it through like?
Say it again, sorry.
Sorry. When the LPs invest, do they invest individually or do they do it under some corporate vehicle?
No. Yeah, I guess it depends on what you mean individually.
Like as
The LPs all invest in the fund.
writing a check.
They don't write, they write a check to the fund.
Does it come from Sam Dorfman or from Sam
No.
Dorfman?
All the money is funneled through the fund. Okay, what's your name?
my question, so the LPs invest directly in the fund, but the GPs sort of have to.
The GPs invest too.
Yeah.
Remember, the GPs,
That is the fund one LLC.
the green button.
Yeah.
I don't know which one you're referring to.
So.
Yeah.
the LPs,
No. I said the green button, not all the buttons. Okay, let's try it again. Here, right?
Yeah, my question is quite straightforward.
We're here.
The LPs put the funds back.
Which one? Here?
Yes, the LPs, they put their money directly in the fund.
In
But the
here?
GPs have to sort of funnel their funds
Here?
through an LLC. Why? Why did they have to do that?
So remember, this company is the general partnership, right? It says GP, right? GP, general partnership. That is that's owned by these guys, right? So they put their money into there. The LPs don't do that. They don't put it into the general partnership, right? The general partnership means that's mine, right? I set it up. But what I also set up is the fund itself. And the LPs put their money directly into the fund, not the general partnership. I see this is more confusing than it should be. I don't know why.
No, but because everyone wants to be protected. So everyone wants to invest via a company, via a legal entity. And the general partners are people.
I thought I was doing really well. Actually, I totally screwed this up.
What is effective is that, or the way you explain it, it does look like the general partners funnel money into the funds through the LLC,
Yes,
right? but the LPs just put money directly.
That's right, into the fund, not the company, into the fund.
Yeah. We put money directly in the fund,
Right.
right? But the GPs, the general partners put money in the fund. Who are the
Okay. So the reason for that is because these are individuals, those are corporations. So they're setting up a corporate entity, right, to provide them another veil of protection. Okay, is that was what the confusion was? Okay, good. Anyway, so this is the way, right? This is the flow. This is the way a fund is structured, organized, right? And this is the flow of the way the money goes. So just to highlight the flow again, so here we see the capital contributions, right? First of the GP to the GP puts it into the general partner, the people who are the GPs, put it into the corporate veil, the corporate organization that is the general partnership, and then they provide the money. The general partnership puts the money into the fund. The LPs do the same thing. They put their money directly into the fund. And then, as I said before, the money flows into the, to the portfolio companies. This is when they buy equity in the companies, they get a share of that, right? Now, does the LP own equity in the company? Who says yes? Who says no? The no's have it, right? The LPs don't own any equity. The only entity that owns equity is the fund. Now, the LPs own a percentage of the fund, right? So let's assume for a moment that each LP has 10% of the fund, right? So they have how much ownership of the portfolio companies? This is a trick question. Think about it. It's either one of two things.
It depends on how much they invest.
Let's assume everybody has there are 10 LPs, and each one has a 10% share of the fund. How much do they own? Or what's their share of profit?
Depends on the weight of the investment that does the fund.
So it's going to depend on what? Something we'll see a bit later, but it's actually here. Where is it? There it is. It's covered up. So let's see. Let's go forward. Right. So this was now what we're looking at is how money flows back up. Right, so let's start again. Right. This was how money came down to the portfolio companies. Right. Now, assuming that there's a sale of a company, and now we have some sort of profit. Okay. We spoke about this a little bit last week. We're going to speak about it a lot more now. So what happens is how much has to get repaid to the LPs before the GPs get a share of the profit? Who knows?
Don't know the money. %. You need to return all the money before you.
Right. So it's actually what we're going to see. It's actually a little bit more than 100%. Okay, we're going to get to that. But let's assume for now 100%. So if we raise the fund, again, just for numbers, just to make the numbers easy. Let's say we raise the fund of $100 million, right? So I get to an exit of $50 million. What do I get on the GP? How much do I get? Let's do it this way. I got to an exit of 50 million. How much do I share in that? 0. Okay, great. So now I got to an exit of 60 million. How much of that do I share? 10. Right? Because 50 and 60 is 110, 110 minus 110. So now we share. How much do I get? What's that?
2 million.
2%?
2 million.
2 million. Very good. So this they get 8 and I get 2. Right? It's an 80-20 split. Once we pay back, me, the general partner, once I pay back the investors all of the money that they put in, right? Then everything else we start to share. Okay? Now that I've convinced you of that, now erase that from your minds, right? Because now I'm going to change it. What?
So then you lost 100 million.
You don't understand? Okay, look, very simple. Eric, right?
Income.
Whatever. I can't hear right now. Sorry. I have to change the batteries in my hearing aids. So let's say like this. You give me $100 and I tell you, listen, I'm going to take that $100 that you gave me and I'm going to invest it. Okay? And I'm hoping to make $200. Right now, I didn't tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to bet on the horse. And when the horse wins, I'm going to get $200, right? You say, okay, great. So if you win, you say to me, if I win, then you give me my $100 back, right? That's fair. And then we'll split the rest. How much do you want? How much do you want to give me? Let's say you say, you know what? I'll take 80%. I'll give you 20%. Great. So you gave me 100, and now I come back with 200. And you say, how much do you want? 180, right? You're 100 plus 80% of the profit, and I get 20. It's the same thing here, right? We got 100 million. I have to pay back the 100 million before I get. Let's say in that example, I said, you know what, you gave me 100 and I brought you back 100. And I say, you know what? Okay, where's my share? What are you going to tell me? I don't get a share. Why? Because I gave you 100, gave it back to me. Right? You didn't make more money. There's nothing to share. It's the same thing here. Right? Once we pay this back, then we can share in whatever's extra. Okay? So until we get to over 100, we don't get anything. If this was $50, I'd still be at 0. I don't get anything. Everything else that comes in now afterwards, now we start to share. Okay? So that's pretty easy. Now I'm going to change it. Okay? And now I'm going to tell you the way it really works. So remember, where are we? Oh, we somehow like moved all the way out, right? Yeah, okay. Right, so we said this is the flows into the fund. And we said that this is the way the money goes back, right? The GP gets 20% of the profit. But what about, and then they get 80%, right? They get their principal plus 80%. But what about the management fees? Who knows how management fees work?
Regardless of the exits, there's there's two ways. There's on all the fund or the contribution.
I hate to stop you, but the first word you said was wrong. Regardless of the exit. It has nothing to do with the exit.
I believe the management fee is taken off. Like, once the entire investment fund rests in the fund itself, the management fee is still taken off.
Okay, what were you gonna say?
From the 99% of the limited funds. When
You guys are going down the wrong path, yeah.
The management fee you pay per year, 2%, and you can also have performance
Right.
fee. It's how much you in like half.
Stop with performance. Okay, stop right there. Okay, so, Juliana is right. So what is it? So I set up a fund. I have this operating company that I need in order to actually do the work. I need an office and I need associates and I need a car and I need PR and I need legal and I need this and I need that. So the deal is like this. We agree that the fund is going to pay 2% a year in management fees to the operating company for the budget of the operating company, right? I need to operate. That's why it's called an operating company, right? That's the way I run things, the way I do the work. That's how I get paid. That's how everybody gets paid. The money comes from the fund. Now, what I don't want to talk about is how much it is. Most operating companies get 2%, most management fees are 2% of the overall fund. So if I raise 100 million, then my budget is 2 million a year. Some, though, get it out of the capital that was called. So it's true, I raised 100 million, but this year I only got 25. So I get 2% of 25, not 2% of 100, right? Let's forget that. Let's assume that the management fees are based on the overall size of the fund, right? So every year, I get 2% of the fund. So in a $100 million fund, I'm getting $2 million. If the fund is 10 years long, how many years will I get 2%? Another one of those two questions. You have two choices. Well, you have more than two choices, but choose first. 10 years. Right, that was choice number one. What's choice number two? First 5 years, first few years, the first number of years. So the answer is that's correct. In other words, why do I get management fees? So I can do the work, right? But remember we spoke about this last week? What's the most intense part of the work? In the first few years, when I'm doing the investing work. Once I'm fully invested, okay, it's not so hard. I'm going to meetings, I'm like kind of having coffee with people, I'm talking to people, right? But I don't have to be going through 100 different presentations every day, okay? So what happens is the management fees start to get reduced. So if I'm getting 2%, something like that, right? Anyway, so here I'm getting 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. In Hebrew, we say ad kan, up to here. Okay? Now, I'm still getting a little bit, but there's a recognition that the amount of work that I did, I'm not doing anymore. Now, if I raise another fund, so then some LPs will say, because when do I start to raise my second fund? Here, right? If I'm doing well, that's it, I'm done investing now, I want to start investing again. I go out and raise another fund. Some LPs, it'll take me 2 years. So some LPs will say, okay, that's it. will invest in the new fund, but no more management fees on the old fund. Let's assume, again, everything I'm telling you is generally true. What does it mean generally true? It means that most people will do it that way, but some will always negotiate other terms, right? So generally, this is the way it's going to work. So let's assume for a second that you get for 10 years. So how much did you actually get? Well, this is 10, this is 2, this is 2.5, this is 3, let's say 3.5, right? So you got $13.5 million over the 10 years. So what does that mean? We had $100 million fund, but the fund also paid me $13.5 million in management fees. So how much money did we actually have to invest with? Right? If this was 15, so this would be 84, right? Whatever this comes to, whatever the management fees total, as much money as you get in management fees comes off of the amount of money that you have to invest. Where? Here, in companies. What does that mean? What does it mean in terms of your performance?
You have to have a better exit.
Your performance has to be even better because I have less money to use to invest with. So now, how do we look at, if this is the case, how do we look at management fees? What?
Like inflation. Like inflation, extra inflation.
Contraction?
Inflation.
Inflation?
Yeah.
It's a loan.
Um,
A loan. And so what happens is, when I think about when do I start to share? So before we said, I have to pay back the fund. You guys gave me $100 million. And before I get into, remember, you gave me 100. I said, okay, if I only give you 100, I don't get anything. I have to give you more than that. I have to give back the 100 million, no more. Now what I have to give back? This plus this. Whatever the management fees come out to, I have to give that back to. So now, let's assume, just for argument's sake again, keep it easy. This is the fund. Management fees are 15. My hurdle is 115. I don't share anything until I pay you back this and this. Why not? It's a loan. Okay, but what is it? What's the idea behind it?
Incentivizes them to perform.
You what?
Earn their money for their fees. I mean, it incentivizes.
Pay better. I was already paid. I'm supposed to be getting money out of the profit. You gave me money before there was any profit. I've already gotten 15 million out of the fund. You've gotten 0. This is a loan because really it's an advance against what you're supposed to make. Okay, you need it in order to operate the fund. Great, we'll give it to you. But you have to pay it back. If you don't pay it back, you get nothing because you've already been paid. You want to run the company? You don't want to do this? Pay for the operation of the company out of your own pocket. Why are you coming to me for money? I'm giving you money to invest it. So what you're saying is I'm taking 15% out of that and I'm not investing it. That makes as an LP, I would say to you, that makes your job even harder. Because your performance has to be all that much better in order to get me the return that I want to get. So not only do we pay back the fund, we have to pay back all the management fees. And then we start 80-20. Okay? Is that clear? Everybody get it?
Should there be an arrow, I mean, think emphasis timeline back then to the fund,
Right.
then distributed? Just looking at this chart, shouldn't we have an arrow back from the manager?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there should be one back, but I didn't put it in. Okay, it should be. Okay, so is this clear so far? Everybody get it? Okay. Yeah, sorry. The management fees, whatever you get, as much as you get, you have to pay back. Okay? Okay, great. So this is like a simple fund. This fund is a single domicile fund. What does that mean? All of the investors are from one place. What happens when you have investors coming from different places? So what happens is this, right? So what happens is, let's say here, we're going to call this America. This is an American fund. Where would this be? Delaware, right? Delaware is the US tax haven, the corporate tax haven. No corporate taxes in Delaware. So almost every corporation sets up in Delaware, right? And every fund sets up in Delaware. And if you're if you're a startup, so you're going to be a Delaware C corporation, right? Because that's what, you don't have to be, but most companies set themselves up in Delaware to, again, avail themselves of the zero corporate tax rate there. Okay? But what happens if you're from Europe? Who's from Europe here? A few people, right? So where would you go? I don't know if it's still good anymore, the Cayman Islands, but traditionally, it was like, you know, the Isle of Man and the Cayman Islands and Barbados and other places where you have a tax haven for those people. Let's say you had people from China, Asia. So I don't know what the deal is there, but you defined a tax haven for them. So depending on where your LPs come from, so you see here, LPs US, LPs non-US, right? So depending on where the tax haven is for the investors that you have coming in, like Israelis are screwed, right? There's no tax haven in Israel, and you have to invest here, right? Everything is local, right? But if you had people from other parts of the world, then what you would do is you'd be replicating this. You'd have another one for some other part of the world, right? Wherever it would be most tax advantageous for the limited partners, you would set up another fund, right? So that they could invest there. So now, what happens? So let's say this is split 50-50, right? 50 million here, 50 million here. Does it matter to these guys? Not at all, right? Because what happens is this fund and this fund both participate equally, or whatever the distribution is. If this is 50-50 here, then they're going to put in 50-50. If this is 70-30, then they're going to put in 70-30. Each one will put in according to its weight. But the investments will be joint investments, transparent to these guys. They're just going to get a check or a wire transfer, right? It doesn't matter where it comes from, because this is all now, it's all the same fund. legally, right, structurally, you have different entities that are transferring money. But from a, like, what is the fund? It's all the same thing. There is no difference. Okay? We started at 12, right? So let's go to 2. Okay, good. So this is the way a fund works. Yes.
I have 3 questions.
No, you only have one.
Only one?
One at a time.
So the question will be about the management, general partners' contribution to the fund.
All right, and so
Why would they need to contribute 1% if they get like 2% a year? I mean, it's just covering half for a year of their.
why do they have to put 1%?
Yeah, 1%, it's like nothing. It's
nothing?
I mean, it's
In
not.
$100 million fund, it's $1 million.
But okay.
You have $1 million to take out of your pocket?
Everything is kind of relative, right? So, but I mean, still, it's like only 1%.
So the reason that they have to pay to begin with is because the LPs want to feel like you have skin in the game, that you're at risk too. It's the same thing here. If I'm a startup company, we spoke about this, right? We said that startups should put some money into the company, and investors expect to see that you've invested in your company. Why? So that you're taking some of the risk too. It's a risky venture. I want to see that you're also participating in that risk. Okay? So the same thing here.
When I form the fund, I invest in the creation of the structure. I already hire some people. When I do fundraising, come into LPs, I already spent some money, right? As a founder of the fund. Can I account these spendings as a contribution to the fund already?
How does the contribution?
I mean, I'm spending money for setting up the fund, for the lawyers, for roadshow with LPs, for initial PR office, etc. Say I need to contribute 1 million, but I already spent 250,000 for just administrative stuff. Can it be considered as my investments already into the fund or not?
You're not going to get away with it.
Okay.
You're going to have to put the money in. It's just the way it is. We expect, the LPs expect that the GP is going to put money in and have risk in the thing. Because otherwise, all the risk is on me and nothing on you. You have to feel like you're at risk too. And that's always going to be the case. I shouldn't say always. Usually going to be the case, even when you're a startup raising money as well. Investors want to feel like, okay, you're taking some of the risk. You're not just taking it from me. The same thing here. You want 99 million of mine, put in 1. By the way, I do apologize. So that million, you're entitled to that back too. In other words, if you weren't entitled to it back, you would say 99, right? Because they put in 99, I put in 1. So I'm entitled to get my million back too. Even though usually what happens is you invest in the fund. She was first. Sure.
Tax codes for different investors. Does that matter for the fund, or is it just that the money's?
Which I don't know what you're pointing to. These guys, the 9 US? Here.
So if you have a fund that's raising money from a lot of different places, and there's different tax codes in those places, is the fund responsible for those different tax codes, or is it?
Ask me in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come back to it. Next. Okay, so this is it. So let's keep going. I want to get a little bit further ahead. So these are the 2 funds that are now invested, right? So in fact, when you look at the metrics for venture capital, right, we pay attention to this, right? There's distributions to paid in capital. So what does that mean? So one way to measure it is on the one hand, we put in 100, but we're only, whoops, where is it? But we're only using 85, right? So one way to think of it is, how much return did I get on this? not on this. This is the more accurate number now, right?
Mhm.
Right? So that's called DPI, distributions to paid in capital, right? The residual value to paid in capital, right, RVPI, that measures, so what do we still have left? Let's say we've only invested 45, so we still have 40 left, right? So we want to measure that as well. And then the last thing we want to do is total value paid in capital, and that combines both. Now we want to see this, right? We want to compare how much money did we actually get, right? Not on 85, but on 100. These numbers are going to be different, right? They have to be different because you're starting out with different numbers, okay? Right. So the problem with all of these is, so what's the difference? We spoke about this also. What's the difference between a return of 5x on the fund? That's nice, but what doesn't it take into account? How long it took to get there. So for how long it took to get there, we have something called the internal rate of return. Now, I'm not going to require you to know this. I mean, you don't have to measure. You don't have to memorize the formula. You don't even have to calculate it. That's not going to be a question at any point, right? But the internal rate of return will give you the rate of return on a time basis. In fact, somewhere here. So here, take a look at this. This is an indication of what the IRR, how the IRR changes. So here, the way this works is like this. So let's say I have 10 years of fund, right? And I have an exit of this is how much I made. So for example, let's say I have a 5x. If I got the 5x in year one, that's like a 400% return on my money. But what happens when the 5x happens in year 8? Now it's only 22% on the money. What's the target IRR that venture funds are supposed to try to reach?
Over 30. Over 30.
30%, right? So whatever the amount of time, whatever the multiple of capital that you get back, you want to try to do it in a way that your IRR is at least 30% a year. And this kind of gives you a sense of, okay, the fact that I made a huge multiple doesn't necessarily mean that I did really well, right? Because the faster I can give that money back to you, the better I'm doing. The longer it takes, well, yeah, you gave me 10 times the money, but it took you 20 years to do it. I mean, I could have done better than that in the market, maybe, right? So this is like an important consideration in terms of how we think about return. So it's 1 o'clock. Let me just see where we are. Right, it's 1 o'clock. And I want to talk about fund construction a little bit, but we'll do that when we get back. So we'll take a break, 15 minutes, and then come back, and then we'll continue. We'll finish this, and then we'll talk about convertible notes. Okay, if anybody wasn't here, if I didn't call your name for attendance, come and see me so I check you out.
Alex.
You I got. Carolina is here. Jonathan. Jonathan, you can go.
I had this, I just want to let you know, I had to do that.
Dan, I got. Is it Dan or Jan? Jan. Okay. Who's next?
I don't know if I'm on the list.
You're good.
I was on the list last time.
What?
I was on the list last time.
You're on it now.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to
Okay. Like, space for more parents. I didn't know. One years. Not what? No, it's like.
Then all on fire and you. And.
Rachel. What was it? You wanted to ask me a question. I asked you to wait. So what was the question?
Oh, the question was about, let's say you have LPs from different countries under different tax codes. How does the VC, is it affected by that? Is it not?
Oh, each one is in the, each one has a tax haven. So they're good.
Okay, so tax is tax haven, like it's like.
Well, there are different places for different investments. If I come from Europe, America doesn't help me. I have to find one that's good for Europe. If I'm in America, well, the Caymans could help me, but I'll have a problem doing it. If I come from someplace else, I have to make sure that the GP, whenever I want to take money from a LP, to make sure that they can put it in a place where it's a tax saving fee, if it's available.
So basically, we're trying to keep tax havens, like they'll either donate or are investing from a perspective also of tax haven.
Right.
Tax haven. What about in Israel?
What about what? In Israel, there's no such thing, except in Israel.
So like, let's say, so if I'm an American operating in the Cayman Islands.
No, you would invest in Delaware.
Right.
Israeli funds would have an offshore account,
Ah, okay, that's what the offer.
but the Israelis would have a problem. Well, oh, something happened. I don't know what it is. Okay, it is what it is. It's happened. Okay. So, this is open. This is open. Okay, so the second half of the class. So, by the way, next week we have our first guest lecture. So next week at the last half of the class, we're going to have a guest lecture. Okay. So in terms of teams, so okay, these are the teams. So 1 second. Okay. In terms of, everybody can see it, right? Yeah. So in terms of teams, these are the teams. Team number 1, team number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, and 7. There are 7 teams of 3. I will share this list with you, right? But you're going to have to get together with your teammates.
I don't have a team.
You don't have a team?
I just enrolled for the course yesterday.
Come to me afterwards. All right. There's somebody else joining the class. They're supposedly joining the class, so we'll figure it out. Anyway, these are going to be the teams going forward. All right. So if you had a team, or I tried to keep it. If you had 4, you lost 1, last person, and then everybody else is put together randomly. Okay. So this is going to be your team going forward. Your first case. I wasn't told that. Let's see if I have it. I have to share this with you. Oh, sorry. The school paid for it. You guys, you don't have to copy the link. I'm going to send it to you via the email. Love Pop is going to be due 4 weeks from today. Right. So we have Passover vacation. We have a few things, but 4 weeks from today, your teams, you're going to have to develop Love Pop. Okay. So in order to do Love Pop, let's do convertible notes. Okay. First, open that. The rest of the discussion on fund structure is going to wait. Okay, if we finish convertible notes, then we can go to it. Right, and now I need to share. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so we're shifting gears, right? We went from fund structure into convertible notes. So, and convertible notes is going to be the reason we're doing this today is because it's going to be part of the Love Pop case, right? The Love Pop case is a company that is looking for investment and actually has a couple of offers, right? And which involve convertible notes. And then they go on well, you'll read the case and you'll see, but they go on a TV show for investment as well. And the question is, what should they do? You know, the people who wrote the case is like, you know, these guys are sitting in a bar and having some beer and trying to think, okay, what do we do next? You know, like, what do we decide? And that's what you have to figure out. So in order to help you understand convertible notes, let's dig into convertible notes, right? So let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. So when is it that you would use a convertible note, right? So the typical scenario is, there are a couple of typical scenarios. But when we talk about, some of them are for later stage companies. But in an early stage company, when would you use a convertible note? So I want to raise around, but maybe the company is so early that it's hard to determine what the valuation of a company should be, right? And since we can't really determine the valuation, and we want to close around, and the investors are actually interested in investing in the company. If they're not really interested in investing in the company, there's really not a lot to talk about, right? So the situation is you have an investor, they want to make an investment in the company, but everybody agrees that the valuation is a little premature, right? It's just too early to do it. Why is it a problem? We could easily determine a valuation for a company, even if it's arbitrary. So why would it be a problem to determine valuation? Yes.
Because the founders get diluted.
Because what?
The founders get diluted.
Right. So I don't want to give up that much dilution. Maybe the valuation is going to be too high, right? So I don't want to give up that much equity yet. So on the other hand, a convertible note is debt. It's not equity. It converts, right? The word convertible means that at some point in the future, the debt will convert to equity. We'll figure out how that works. That's going to be part of it, right? But it's not equity yet. So have I actually bought ownership in the company right now? No. I've lent the company money with the expectation that what? That the company will grow, that at some point the valuation will be set, it'll be set higher, and I'll be able to convert my debt to equity and maybe get a little bonus on the side, right? But at this point, I'm just taking a lot of risk because all I have is debt. So you know what debt means? That means that you might not pay me back either, right? I could lose my money. I'm lending it to you. I have, as a result of the fact that I'm lending it to you, I have no control over what's going on. Because once I buy a piece of the company, now I have a seat at the table. Now I have a say. But if I lend you money, I haven't bought a seat at the table yet. I mean, there are a few limited things that I might be able to do, but I don't have any control yet. And so I'm really in a situation where I'm really interested, on the one hand, positive. I'm interested in the company. I'd like to invest in it. Negative, I'm in a really risky situation here because I'm only lending the company money and I'm not really getting any equity out of it. So which means I don't have any control either, right? And so that leads to all kinds of questions about how's the company going to run? What say do I have? What will happen? We don't know, right? So when we think about what is a convertible note, right? So a convertible note is a loan. I'm lending company money. In exchange for that, at some point, that loan will convert to equity. In addition to that, since it's a loan, I'm also getting interest, right? I lend you money, you give me that money back with 8% interest, or 10%, or 3%, or whatever it is, right? But I'm getting something in addition to the money back, right? But when I want to do the conversion, so I'm going to get some sort of bonus. All right, let's take a simple example. Let's say I gave you $100, right? And when the shares come available, each share is again, just for simplicity's sake, each share is $10, right? So I gave you 100. How many shares should I get? 10, right? 100 divided by $10 is 10 shares. But I took a lot of risk. So I expect to get some sort of bonus. The easiest way to get a bonus is to give a discount. So we're selling shares at $10 a share to other investors. But since you gave us a loan, we're going to give you a 20% discount on the price of the shares. Right? So what's the price of my share? $8. Right? You're paying 10, I'm paying 8. So for your $100, you got 10 shares. For my $100, I got 12. Right? I think that's the way it works. 100 divided by 8 is 12. Okay? Now there's another way to bonus people, and that's where there's something called a valuation cap. We'll get to that later. Right? The assumption is that the company is going to raise money in an equity round. Let's say you're in a situation where a company asks you for a convertible note, but you don't have any confidence that the company is actually going to raise an equity round. Would you give them a convertible note?
No.
Why not?
Because you will never get equity.
Because what I want is equity. If I wanted to give a loan, I'd go to the bank, I'd lend them the money, and they'd give it back to me with interest, right? You know, that's what banks do. Well, once upon a day, they did that. Now they don't do it so much. Now they're starting to do it again because the interest rates are going up, right? But I wouldn't give you the money. I would put it someplace safe. Why should I risk my money giving it to you? I would put it in the bank if that's all I wanted. That's not what I want. What I want is equity. I want ownership. I want a piece of the future of that company. Yes.
Do you also have to give some sort of collateral to get the convertible debt?
Say it again, right?
So because it's essentially a loan, do you also have to give some sort of collateral?
Yeah. So in terms of how long, right? So yes.
No, collateral as in if you're sort of taking a loan, you give a house as a collateral or something else. So in this case, what's the collateral that you have to provide?
So in terms of collateral, yeah, there is no collateral. What are you going to put up? There's nothing there. That's another reason it's risky. There's no collateral. The only thing I can get is equity, but you can't collateralize the equity because it only comes if you raise a round. What if they never raise a round? Okay, so when we think about what makes up a convertible note, what are the components of a convertible note? What are I think I mixed those words up. What are the components of a convertible note, right? So there are different components that make it up. Number one, we expect to convert, but we don't know what the valuation is yet. So how can we convert? So the first component is delayed valuation. We can only convert when there's an equity round. Next component is there's an interest rate. The standard interest rate on a convertible note is usually about 8%, right? Even when the interest was like 0%. Okay. Now that interest, when it accrues annually, by the way. You know, interest can accrue at different periods. It accrues annually, quarterly, daily, or whatever you decide. So here it accrues annually. So there are usually two methods. Usually one is every year, So if it's 8%, you give $1,000. At the end of the year, you get $80 of interest, right? Right, and then at the end of the next year, you get another $80, and then the next year, you get another $80, right? But it shouldn't last that long. But some notes say $80 once. Okay, we usually do it $80 a year. So interest, what happens to the interest when you want to convert? You add it to the principal and it converts to equity also. So the interest is another bonus in terms of your equity conversion, right? I wanted to buy 10 shares, but I wasn't able to. So I gave you a loan. And then at the end of the year, I got a 20% discount. And I also got, not only did I get a 20% discount, but I got another $80. So it's $1,080. And now I divide that by the discount rate. So I've gotten a little extra, okay? There's also something called a conversion trigger. The conversion trigger is what causes the conversion to happen. Most frequently, most common, I raised a round, right? That's what I was waiting for. So when you raise a round, right, now what's happened? I've set the valuation of a company, right? And I've taken in money. So now I use that valuation as the basis for my conversion, right? And then I apply the interest and the discount rate and the valuation cap and all that stuff, whatever it may be. And now I'm able to convert to equity, and that's what I do. Another conversion trigger would be what happens. We said like this. You're interested in investing in my company, but it's too early. We don't have a valuation. We need to wait. So let's do it as a convertible note. The convertible note is going to be for, we expect to be able to raise money within 18 months, 12 months, 24 months. Usually it won't be longer than that, right? 24 months is like the outer limit of convertible notes. Usually it's 12 to 18 months. So let's say we say, okay, look, we expect to raise in 12 months. We're going to do a convertible note with a 12-month maturity. If it's a loan, right, which means it's a note, or it's a note, which means it's a loan, however you want to think about it, right? A loan always has a maturity date. I lent you money, you have to pay me back next week, all right, or next year, or whatever it is. There's a maturity date. There's a time when the loan has to be repaid. So now we say, okay, we're going to raise the money in a year. So the convertible note maturity will be 12 months from now. What happens if 12 months goes by and you didn't raise money? What do? So it's a trigger, right? We'll see what you can do, right? But it could, let's say I didn't expect, now I'm going to convert my loan to equity, or maybe not, right? What happens if the company goes down? That's also a trigger, right? So why would you trigger, let's say the company went bankrupt, right? I say, okay, company failed, we're closing the doors, and I gave you a loan that's convertible. Why would I convert the loan to equity when the company is closing? So you claim it as a write-off. I don't need that. I can write it off now. It's a loan. It's a bad debt.
Because you have priority when the company falls apart and they're receiving the assets.
Right. So the answer is maybe as an owner, I can claim some of the assets, right? Maybe. If there are any assets, right? What if there are no assets? So, okay, that's it. Everything's done. Okay. And then there's the discount rate. So the discount rate, that's what I already told you. That's the bonus. So usually these days it's about 20–25%. But it depends on the company. Really, really strong company might negotiate a lower discount rate. A weaker company, a more risky company, will have to pay more, right? And that's the play. Okay, so those are the components of convertible debt. So the question is, when do we do it? When is it most appropriate to do it? And the answer, I think, is here. In other words, when I start to see that maybe we have some early customers, maybe we're just before that, right? Again, the problem is if I've already gone to my angel round, right? The first angel round very frequently today is done with something called, anybody know what it's called? A safe. A safe is not a vault in the wall. A safe is an acronym. And don't ask me what it stands for, I always forget. Yeah?
Agreement for future equity.
Oh, there you go. All right. A standard agreement for future equity. Which was created by who, by the way? Oh, you don't know that? Which?
Y
Combinator, right? Y Combinator created the safe. Why? Because convertible notes are actually a little complicated. And they wanted something much simpler. So they created a one-page document that acted as a convertible note, and they called it a safe, right? And it became standard. And all the Y Combinator companies used it. And then it became a standard for everybody. But the idea was that there was very little negotiating, right? You set the interest rate, and that was it. You had the discount, and that was done. So usually the first angel round, right, very often will kind of do it with a safe or a convertible note because they're not really ready for the valuation yet, right? But they want to get a piece of the company. And a lot of founders go around saying, I'm raising money with a safe, right? Blah, 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 here are the details, right? But they start with, I'm raising money through a safe, right? It's not like I'm raising money through a safe. So all of a sudden, okay, I get it. That's the structure we're using. Right? Now, so we already said this stuff, right? Because
How do I determine my interest rate?
How do you what?
If they say that they are raising money to the state, like which interest rate do they choose?
So we'll get to the safe later. We'll get to it, right? Let's see what it is. So the other assumption is that the company will probably have an exit at some point. Right? Why is that an assumption? Because otherwise, why would I want to invest? If I don't think the company is going to be successful, if success is defined by an exit, I'm not going to invest in the company. Obviously, I must think there's potential there. Otherwise, why bother? Okay? So, when to use it? Early. Right? Now, when would you use a convertible note later in the life of a company? Does anybody know? As a bridge to the next funding. Right. So if you're between funding rounds, right? So what happens? I raised my angel round, I raised my A round, and now I'm looking for the next round. And the company's in good shape, but it's taking the funding environment isn't so easy, taking a little bit longer than I thought it would take. And so very often the earlier investors will provide money to the company as a bridge loan. The bridge loan is exactly what it sounds like. It's a loan to help you bridge from where you are to where you expect to be in a very short period of time. The bridge loan is never, I shouldn't say it, to start with, a bridge loan is never going to be for a year, right? It's too long. It's going to be for like, okay, I'm going to be a 3-month bridge, 4-month bridge, short term. Right? Unfortunately, sometimes it works out to be a year, right? In any case, so the bridge loan is exactly the same structure as a convertible note. There's no difference, right? In terms of the way it's structured, right? It's got the same expectations. It's got the same structure and benefits and bonuses and all that stuff. Okay, but what? It's not called a convertible note, even though that's what it is. It's called a bridge loan. And the bridge loan is not employee. And the bridge loan is convertible by default. Okay. So why do it? What are the advantages? We already said. So number one advantage is speed. I don't have to wait for evaluation. Everybody wants to do this, right? No, it's like, both sides are consenting. Let's say it like that, right? Both sides say, yeah, I want to invest in the company, and you say, yeah, I want to get your money, right? And the reason that's important is because there are companies that say, I don't want your money, right? There are people we don't want money from too. So both sides are consenting. So we don't have to wait a long time to get it done. We could use a safe, we could use a standard convertible note, we can use other kinds of convertible notes, but these are very straightforward. Since we're not negotiating over terms that we're going to get to when we learn about term sheets, you give me the money, okay, here's the discount, here's this, that. That's it, we're done. Great. Speed. The next thing that's really important is legal fees. Taking an equity investment is very expensive, right? Not more expensive than the money you get, hopefully, right? But it's expensive. And a standard or an average, it depends on the lawyers really. But in New York, we were spending $15,000 to $25,000 to do a round, right? We had a really good lawyer, right? But there were lawyers who charged $50,000, $60,000 just to do an equity round, right? And you could understand it because of all the work the lawyers have to do. But it's just not so, it's expensive. Convertible note, I don't even need a lawyer. I mean, I should always use a lawyer. Okay, let me highlight this, right? If you're an entrepreneur or if you're an investor, always use a lawyer. Always. But in theory, this is standard. If I use a safe, there's not much a lawyer will do, right? It's not going to change the safe at all. He may give you one, but he's not going to change it. It's a standard document, okay? So in terms of legal fees, there's almost nothing, right? It's going to be very, very inexpensive. The other advantage is that if I need to raise money, I have a window during which I can raise it. In other words, when I raise an equity round, I have to get the money. So I'm raising $1 million. One investor won't give me the money. Let's say I'm raising $1 million and I have 5 different investors, right? They're not going to give me money until I raise all of it. Otherwise, they're taking too much risk, right? Here, I can do a rolling raise. So I open up the safe, or I open up the raise, and I say, okay, we're raising money through a safe or through a convertible note. We're raising $1 million, right? So you say, okay, I'm going to give you 100,000. You say, I'm going to give you 50. You're going to give you 25. Everybody can contribute along the way. So we have time in order to be able to collect the money. Okay? When you do that, obviously, maybe not obviously, but at a certain point, just like I think we spoke about when a venture fund raises money, they have, what do they have? They call it the first closing, right? We spoke about a first closing. So they say, okay, we got to 35, 40% of the fund. So now we're going to start. You can do the same thing when you have a rolling raise. When you get to a certain level, you can start, functioning. Yeah.
Is there a situation where you have a convertible note, but you don't have another round, someone buys the startup before the next round?
Up front, no. In retrospect, maybe. Right? In other words, if I'm an investor and you want to raise money, and I say, okay, we're going to do it, we agree that we're going to do it a convertible note, I would never do it with the expectation that I'm going to just get the money back. I don't need you for that. I don't need that risk. The only reason I would do it is because because I expect equity in return, right? So if your ultimate objective is, I'm just going to pay him back his loan, that's not going to fly. Okay, that's not so good. Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, when getting a convertible note, you are carrying the same risk as an early valuation, because if you need to pressure, you get a loan for like say 100,000, you need to pressure yourself to get to a valuation of $1 million.
Mhm.
And if you don't get to that $1 million valuation, you get diluted too. So you're in the same risk as an early valuation.
That's why there's a lot of risk, right? We expect the valuation to go up, but what if it doesn't? I'm screwed. As the investor, as the lender, I'm screwed, right? Because I wouldn't, in other words, again, my expectation is everybody's expectation is, right? That when I enter into the convertible note, that the valuation will reach a certain level. And on that basis, it makes sense for me to convert to equity. But you said I took $1 million. Let's say you only got to $500,000. So it's not good for me or for the company, because the company doesn't have the money it really needs. In other words, if I start out by wanting to raise $1 million, it's because I need $1 million in order to build the company successfully. If I can't raise that money, then I start out with less money than I need in order to build the company. And most likely, I'm not going to do well because I don't have enough capital. I'm undercapitalized, right? So just like you won't have enough money, the person who expected you to reach $1 million valuation, I'm going to get screwed because in other words, had I known that you wouldn't be able to reach the valuation that we expected, I wouldn't have given you the money, right? Because maybe I'll get it back, maybe I won't, but I'm certainly not going to get the kind of equity in a company with the promise that I wanted in that situation, okay? So a lot of this has to do with what are your expectations? Do we share a common vision of what's going to be? And if we feel that that vision is doable and we share it, there's a basis for doing it. And if we don't, most likely we're not going to get involved. Okay? Okay. So what are the disadvantages? We saw what the advantages are. What are the disadvantages? So the disadvantages are based on what we've said already, right? So number one, as the investor, I'm not getting equity. I'm giving you a loan. I have no say in what's going to happen. I don't know what the valuation is going to be, so I may have a situation like Mayor? Yeah, like Mayor just described, where we expected this great valuation, we fell short, right? So I get screwed again, okay? There's no collateral, right? So my loan is completely unguaranteed, because what am I going to collateralize the thing? Nothing. Maybe the IP of the company, that's not so easy, okay? So one of the levers that you have as a convertible, when you enter into a convertible note, is you could say, if you want to raise money, or if you want to take another note, you need my approval, right? Because why? So let's say I entered into a convertible note with you guys, right? A year goes by. And, it's still not so easy for you to raise money. So you say, you know what, equity. Say what, I'll take another note. That's easier. So what happens when you take a second note?
The first note holder will say you need to pay me first.
So the first question is who gets paid, right? What happens? Maybe you're not going to convert to equity, and then I'm screwed, right? Because I wanted to get equity out of the deal, right? So if I'm smart, I might put conditions on you to take another convertible note. You say, you know what, if you want to do it, that's fine, you need my permission. We have to talk about it first, right? Maybe you'll buy me out or something else, right? I don't want to be number two, and you'll end up being number two, okay? And then, of course, the biggest disadvantage is that what you expected that was going to happen, that would convert to equity, doesn't happen. And again, you're left holding the bag, right? So we already talked about this, why is delaying valuation is a good idea? Because right now it's not, we can't do it. And if we do it, the founder is going to get screwed because the valuation will be too high. And then when I take the investment, I'm going to lose too much. And all of a sudden, I'm disincentivized from being in my own company. And that doesn't help anybody, right? So when you want to think about raising money for anything, in any case, you need a funding plan. You need to have a plan in place that's going to say, okay, how much money are we raising? What are we going to do with the money? What's going to happen? Because if you come to me and you say, okay, I need money, but valuation is too low and blah, blah, blah. And, maybe we'll do it as a convertible note. So I'll say, great, show me the trajectory of the company. What are you doing? What's going to be next year? What's the plan? How much money are you going to be raising? I want to get a sense already of, okay, great. If I gave you a, $250,000 convertible note, so what can I look forward to? Not that I know for sure, but at least again, it's all about expectations, right? What kind of expectations should I set for myself in terms of when I'm going to be able to convert and how much we're going to be able to convert, et cetera, et cetera. The funding plan is what we use in order to demonstrate what we're doing. So when we see like an entrepreneur, I don't remember if I do. Yeah, and when we look at an entrepreneur, right? So when you look at the financial slide, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm looking to raise money. And I do my presentation and say, okay, what do you want? And I bring up my financial slide. So my financial slide will be basically the same thing. And say, okay, right now we're looking for $1 million. It's going to last a year. This is what we're going to do with the money. We're going to develop. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. At the end of the year, this is where the company will be. So those are the 4 different components or elements that you need in a successful financial needs slide. Right? How much, how long, what are you going to use it for, and what's the outcome going to be? The outcome is really important because we want to see, okay, what's the valuation going to be in a year or at the end of the period? So here too, we use the same thing. That financial needs slide is what we're going to show our investors. And it's going to include all these things. I just said, how much are you looking for? How long is it going to last? When are you going to raise money? What are you going to use the money for? What do you expect the valuation to be when you raise it? You're going to say to me, I think the valuation is going to be like 250,000. I'm going to say, I'm out of here. That's not good enough for me. I'll take all the equity in the company. It won't be anything left for you. If it's not going to be high enough, there's no incentive to get involved, right? This is how you can't prove it, but at least if you have a compelling story and you can back it up, well, then you may be able to convince the investor, okay, great, this company has potential. There's something here, right? But these are the components that make that up, right? So next question is, how much do you raise in a convertible note? And it goes back to this, right? It has to fit in within the overall plan. How do I get, basically what I want to do is I want to get from where I am now to the point that I can raise money in an equity round with a higher valuation. So how much is that? I don't know, right? That's what you have to figure out based on your financial projections and everything else that you do. Okay. So here's the financial needs slide that I just described. Right, so you can see amount, time, purpose, and outcome. Right, and you can describe this for the next round. And this is the information that you need to make it compelling for an investor. The outcome is really just to be able to set the expectation of how much the valuation will grow. Because most people say, I'm looking for $1 million, to build my app. And that's it. They leave out, okay, it's going to last for a year, and this is going to be the outcome. If I don't have all of this information as an investor, then I can't really judge or evaluate the investment itself. Yeah.
And creating this table for reaching the milestones as an entrepreneur, you need to ask for the exact amount you think you need, or you should go.
No, I would always ask for 20% more, or more, always a little bit more. You always want to be, you always want a little bit more than what you need, if you can afford it, right? Obviously, it depends on the valuation.
This book says 50% more.
I'm sorry?
This book says 50% more.
Okay, 50% more. I don't, look, it really comes down to a question of, greed versus need. Okay? In venture capital, or I shouldn't say that, in entrepreneurship and in VC and in angel, everything is always a question of greed versus need. How much do I actually need? And how much am I willing to give up to get it? Right? So whoever is in a weaker position loses. That's the way it works. If I'm really uptight for money, then I'm willing to give it away. I'm willing to take it and give away more in exchange for it. If I really care about my equity more than I care about the money, then I'm going to be a much more difficult negotiator when it comes to valuation, because I'm going to try it to make the valuation as high as possible so that I give up the least amount of equity that I can. And what you see is, this is an aside, but what you see is that you could have two very different entrepreneurs, and they get the same exact deal, right? An investor comes to you, he comes to you and says, I'm going to invest in both of your companies. The same thing, $1 million at a $4 million pre-money valuation. And one of them says, wow, that's great. And the other one says, wow, that sucks. How could it be? It's the same exact deal, but their circumstances are completely different. And that's the thing. Everybody's circumstances are different. So given, this is going to be proven out in the final exam, because you're all going to have to evaluate, two term sheets that you've received. And everybody is pretty much going to say, most of you are going to say some of the same things, and everybody's going to have a little bit of a different twist on it, because it goes through this, right? And you all think differently. Your situations are all different, right? And that's just the way life is. Okay? Okay. So here's a 12-month note. And what I want to do is get to the, this is the way you can figure out what you're doing. You figure out your milestones, you figure out how much money you need, you figure out when you're going to raise, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no big deal. I want to get to the, how you figure out the discounts and how you compare. Like, what are the, conversions? Let me just take a think. So we already said that when we think about the note, right, there's certain components to it. The interest rate is usually going to be 7 to 10%, but it's usually these days it's around 8 to 10%. Again, the weaker the company, the more risk, so the higher the return. The stronger the company, the less the risk, the lower the return. So usually interest rates are around 8%. Maturity dates, as I said, are usually 12 to 18 months, because if it's already 2 years or more, that's too long. You know, it's too much risk. So we don't like that. We want something that's a little closer, you know, to the eye. And then we have different things. We have to deal with the securities. So when we think about the conversion trigger, so what is the conversion trigger? What causes that? We already spoke about what that is. We have to talk about what security in the note can you convert to? Are you converting to common shares, preferred shares? So it depends on who you are and what you negotiate. Some people, most convertible notes convert to common, but if you're an investor, you're going to want to get the same thing that everybody else is getting. So usually, depending on who's doing the investing at the round, if it's VC or an angel, they're going to get preferred shares. You're going to want to get the same preferred shares. So you're going to say, okay, whatever the next investor gets, that's what I get. Okay. And then we have to look at the discount and the valuation cap, right? That's where it gets everything up until there, everything is easy. It's the discount and the valuation cap that confuse people. So let's kind of get to that. So here are some of the, we mentioned there were certain triggers, right? One trigger was you raised the round. Great, so now I convert like everybody else. Another trigger was the company failed, and now I'm screwed, so I have to figure out what I'm going to do. Another one would be, though, what if you exited the company? I invested in your company in a with the expectation, right, that at some point you're going to raise a round. But in the meantime, somebody comes along and says, you know what, I want to buy your company. Forget about investment. I'll buy it. And I'll pay you a lot of money for it. Oh, that's kind of cool, right? So I, as a convertible note holder, right, who has money, right, that I can convert to equity, well, once the transaction is set, now I know what the price of the share is, right? Now, once I know the price of the share, well, I can convert my loan to equity. And what do? Sell it with the rest of the equity in the company, right? So not only it's a trigger because there's a change of ownership. In this case, a positive change. We have other kinds of changes that are not so positive, right? So here you can actually make some money. Great. So as I said before, when we think about the security, there are only two choices. You either get common or you get preferred. And usually it depends on what the other people are getting. All right. If I'm an investor, so if somebody's coming along and getting preferred shares, then I want to get the same thing they're getting. If they're getting preferred shares, I'm going to get preferred shares. But if for some reason they're getting common stock, then I'll probably get screwed too and get common stock. Okay. So the discount rate, this is where we start to get into some math, okay? Because we have to figure out how to actually calculate that. So the discount rate is really a bonus for the risk you're taking. We already said that what happens, I'm going in early, I'm taking a lot of risk, right? I'm giving you a loan, I'm not getting equity, so I have no ownership, which means I have even more risk. So I want to get some sort of bonus. I want to get some compensation for my risk later on. So the easiest way to do it is with the discount rate. The size of the discount is an indication of the strength of the company. If you think that the average discount is 20%, or between 20 and 25, really, right? Depends. So if you have a company that has a 30% discount rate, so what does that tell you about the company? More risk or less risk? More risk, right? Because if it was less risky, it would be on the lower side of the discount because they don't need it, right? Yeah.
Been in situations like this on the investor side, and I was calculating bonus based on my expected return. Because I know that, for instance, conversion would be in a year, so I want to get 30% return on average a year. That is why the discount must be 30%. It's not even an indication of the company's risk or whatever. It's just an indication of my appetite for return.
But you're saying it's greed and need again, right? The more I need, the more I'm willing to give up. So I'll give you a higher discount rate to get the money, make it more attractive. Right?
Yeah, because otherwise it would compromise my return, because I eventually want to become an equity holder and exit at some multiple, right? And if I'm holding convertible note for a year without having this kind of return, it means that I'm diluting the overall return for my position in future.
Okay. Possible. Anyway, let's get back. So we have, right. Yeah, so let's assume for a second that we're going to stick to a 20% discount. And again, just for the sake of ease. So something really interesting happens, right? As the valuation of a company goes up, so what happens to the equity that I'm supposed to get? It goes down, right? In other words, let's give an example. Again, we started out today and we said, I'm going to give you $250,000 as a convertible note. The expectation of valuation is that we expect to raise money at a $2 million valuation in a year. Okay, great. If you raise at a $2 million valuation, then I can figure out how much equity I'll be entitled to, right? It's easy. Why are we giving a convertible note? We don't know what the valuation is, right? So we don't know how much we can get. But if we have an expectation of getting to $2 million, then I can sort of calculate what my expected conversion will be and how much equity I'll get out of that. What happens? So usually what happens is, companies aren't always able to get to that, right? But what happens if the company does really well? And instead of $2 million, now the valuation is $8 million. So now what happened to me? My conversion, I get 1/4 of what I thought I was going to get. The valuation is 4 times greater than what we thought it would be. So that means that now I'm going to get it's not exact, but a quarter of what I thought I was going to get. Now, I knew that. But okay, a year later, right? When I thought I was going to get a valuation of 2, I get a valuation of 8. Had I known that when I did this then, would I have done the deal? Probably not. Because maybe I would have said, you know what, for that kind of conversion, it's not worth it. I want to get, remember we talked about inventory? We said that investors, for every $1 million they invested, or whatever the investment is, if I invest $1 million, I expect to get 20% in equity. So my money is equal to a certain amount of equity. If I can't get that equity, so do I really want to invest my money? Maybe not, right? Because I need to get a certain amount of equity in order to start to think about being able to pay back my investors, right? So if I go into a convertible deal with the expectation that the valuation is going to be low, which means I'm going to get a bigger piece of equity for my money, and then a year later, the valuation jumps so much that had I known that then, I wouldn't have done the deal because I'll never be able to get it. 1 second. Don't show me. Wait. I might not have done the deal because I wouldn't be able to get the kind of equity I want. So what can we do? So we can have something called the valuation. That caps the valuation. So for example, if we thought valuation was going to be 2, if that was the expectation, we might have said, we'll put a valuation cap at 4. Because if the company does well, that's good, right? I'm already getting an increase in my value, but I'm getting less equity than I wanted to. So if it goes up to 8, welcome. If it goes up to 8, right, I might not have done the deal. But if it went up to 4, maybe, okay, that's in the ballpark, right? Something in the ballpark that I was like, okay, it's not so bad, right? So what happens is we can create a valuation cap. And the cap says like this: if I give you a convertible note and we expect the valuation to be at about 2, right? We'll cap the upside, right, of the valuation so that if it jumps through the roof, I don't get screwed. And then everybody else is investing at 8 million, I'm going to only invest at 4. And in that way, I protect myself. I protect my position, right, against the company doing so well that now I'm screwed. Because my equity position, which I thought was going to be this big and reasonable, is now going to be tiny. And for that kind of equity, I wouldn't have done the deal to begin with. Yes.
Or this percentage of the shares, but is it something not in line?
Right, so wait, so hold on. So we have 2 different ways to protect ourselves, right? What are we protecting ourselves from, by the way? Remember, we took all this risk, right? We took all this risk, and now we need to get some sort of bonus to cover the risk that we took. And we have 2 ways to do it. One is the discount rate, and the other is the valuation cap. You still want to ask?
But I was
Just speak up.
Can I add something like, okay, the cap is 20 million for me, and I also want to say the amount of equity I will have in exchange of this that will not be less than 30% or 50% of the total shares of the company. Can I also combine these 2?
I really can't hear. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You have noticed that you, it's me. Not working. You have to wait.
No, but also like the amount of shares.
Thank you.
But still, it can be more than.
Wait, let's see.
If we need to establish a vacation cap, means we need to have a staff population, and this is the guy that we want to avoid.
Of course you have to. So the question is, what do you get? Which bonus do you get?
It's easier to have the business.
So the answer is, it depends. So sometimes you get just the discount. Sometimes you get just the valuation cap. Sometimes you get the better of the 2. Right? So you have to always negotiate. If you were doing it, what would you negotiate for?
Customer instructions, which is why.
Obviously, I would want to get both, and then I would want to get the better of the 2, right? Now I have to figure out how do I calculate the difference? So that's what I'm going to do next, right? So here we're going to take a convertible note, that's exactly the same, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to compare what the discount would be, what the valuation cap would be, and so we can compare which is better for us, right? So here you have, again, keeping numbers simple, right? We have a $10,000, what's it called? Convertible note. The valuation cap is 4 million. Okay. The pre-money valuation is 12 million. So that's much higher than we thought it would be, right? Because the valuation cap was set at 4. That means that the valuation cap was set at 4. That means the expectation was even lower, right? It was probably 1 or 2. So we have a situation that I just described, okay? And the price per share is $10. So now that we have all that, so we can say like this: the value cap is what? Is 4 million. So we can take the $4 million divided by the 12 million pre-money valuation. Okay? And that comes to $3.33 a share. Now we say, okay, great. We have 10,000 shares, $10,000 that we gave. And now we have to convert that. The price per share for us, the price per share for everybody else is how much? It's 10. But we had a valuation cap. The price per share that we're paying is this. So when we convert our 10,000, we're getting 3,000 shares, 3,003, right? Everybody else is getting 1,000. So what you see is that in this situation, where what happened, where the price, the final valuation really jumped. Since we have a valuation cap, we're protected from that big jump. And the benefit is actually significant. We're getting 3 times the number of shares that everybody else is getting in this situation. Okay? So that's example number 1. Now we take another one. This is a cap, no valuation. So here we have a discount. What's the discount? We get a 20% discount. Again, it's the same. This is the same all the time, right? The condition of the note is the same. The valuation, everything is the same. But now we're looking at it from a different perspective. So keep it in mind, right? So now we have a 20% discount on the price. What was the price per share? $10 a share. So that means when we get a discount of 20%, instead of paying $10 a share, we're now going to pay $8 a share. Because we take 10 times 20 is 2, subtract it, our price per share is 8. Everybody else is paying 10, we're paying 8. So now, when we convert it, so again, what happens? We have 10,000 shares. When we convert at $8, we get 1,250 shares. Everybody else is converting at $10 a share. So they're getting 1,000 shares. The benefit to us is 250 shares. Now you'll notice something. What's the percentage benefit to us? 25%. What was the discount rate? 20%. So what happens is the discount that you have is always going to be less than the benefit you receive as a result of the discount. Right? In other words, whatever the discount is, I'm going down, the other way I'm going up. So it's, it's a trick question on a quiz would be, if you have something like, you know, if you received 250 shares out of 1,000, the discount rate was 20. No, that wasn't the discount rate. Oh, sorry, the discount rate was 25. And the answer would be no, that's not the discount rate. That's the benefit that you received. The discount rate would have been something else, and you could now work your way backwards and figure out what the discount rate was. But it would be lower than that.
Question in the previous example. On
Right.
the example of the previous one,
This one.
yes. Because if the value cap would be higher, it's
Then 4.
than 4 or lower.
Let's say it was 6.
Yes. It would be 6. It worked the other way.
So in that case, what would have happened? The price per share would have been how much? 5? 5? Why 5? Who said, what do you think?
No, 5. No.
If the cap, if the valuation cap was at 6 million instead of 4, the price per share would have been 2. It would have been 6 over 2. And then the price per share would have been $2 a share, not 333. This is calculated by taking the value cap divided by the pre-money valuation. So if this value cap changes to 6, then it's 6 over 12, and that's going to be 2. If this goes down to 10, and this stays the same, it's going to be 250, right? Does that answer the question?
No, yes, but the formula needs a parentheses because
What?
What?
So this is the formula. Value cap divided by pre-money valuation times the price per share. The adjusted price per share. Okay? Look, the price per share, okay, one more time. Let me see if I can explain it. The price per share, right, is set at $10. I'm not going to pay $10 because I'm paying an adjusted price based on the cap, right? So the adjusted price based on the cap is calculated by dividing the cap by the pre-money valuation and multiplying it by the price per share. So the value cap was 4. The pre-money valuation was 12, which is equal to a third. It's 336 times 10, right? A third. It's a third. What?
Take the value cap.
It's like 33% times 10, it's 336.
No, but if we take the value cap to 6,
I have to change what?
the value cap.
If I change the value cap,
Yes.
right, if this goes to 6, then if this stays the same, then the price is 2. It's, oh, half, sorry. It's 5, right, sorry. Sorry, you're right, $5. Right, because the value cap is higher, the price per share is going to be higher.
It's wrong.
What?
So let's say the value cap was 12, which is the same as the pre-money, then you're paying the same amount, right?
If, right, 6 divided by 2 is 12 is 1 is half. Right, 50%. 50% times 10 is 5. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, so the question is, what happened? Which one would you choose? Clearly, if I had to, if the choice was the better of the two, so clearly the value cap comes out with a better deal. I ended up with 3,000 shares instead of 1,250, right? That's almost 3 times as much, 2.5 times as much, whatever it is. So now what happens if, as you said, we changed the deal, right? If the pre-money, where is it? Here we have, if we change the pre-money, right? Here the pre-money was 12. So what happens when the pre-money is, where is it? 4.5. Here. So now the value cap was set at 4. The pre-money is higher than that, but not that much higher, right? So the question is, intuitively, which would you think would be better? You don't know, right? Yeah, that's why you have to figure it out. But if you do the calculation, now the discount turns out to be better because the difference, so the way value cap is really beneficial when there's a big differential. The bigger the differential between the value cap and pre-money, the more attractive the value cap option becomes. The less the differential, right, the less attractive it becomes, and then the discount may become more attractive. But you'd have to figure out what the break even is between the valuation cap and the discount to figure out at what point you make it work. Like here for sure, right? The what you call it, the discount becomes more attractive than the valuation than the value cap. But okay, what 45? Okay. What I want to do is I'm going to give the teams, as are you have new teams. I want to give you, I still don't know each other. Give a few minutes to get together with your teams. Although maybe we'll go back to the front structure. So the big issue is what happens and give you a convertible. Get you a trade. So I gave you a note. If yours goes by, then 30 days. What do I do now?
Or you get your money back in the injury.
Right. I mean, basically, the way I would do it is, first of all, you probably involve with the company a little bit, so you know what's going on. So if you think the company is moving positively, and they're getting closer and closer to what you need to do, you probably say, okay, we'll extend the cap. We'll extend the note for another 6 months. And that adds more interest and stuff. And you may change the terms a little bit, but maybe not. And you say, okay, we'll just leave it the way it is. We'll extend it and we'll just take some more interest and stuff. And hopefully everything will work out. On the other hand, maybe the company isn't doing so well. And you say, you know what? And then this one's a loser, right? So instead of putting more, instead of waiting, I want to convert or I want my money back, I'm out. So it really depends on what's going on at that time. And you will make a decision based on the circumstances at the time. Okay? And that's what this talks about, right? So those are the different options. Another option is you convert. And now you take an ownership position in the company. And it could get really messy when you do that. Because one of the things you might do is you might kick the managers, the founders out, right? You have to be careful, like what's going on. Okay, we already talked about this, what happens. Okay, this really doesn't help us that much. Raising it, we talked about it. Good. Right. So, yes.
What's the conversion price if we decide to convert?
What?
What's the conversion price when we decide to convert and not to extend, not to take our money back? I mean, in terms of
in terms of the startup failing to raise another round, and we need to.
The company's not doing well? Or-
Yes, if the company is not.
If the company's not doing well, you don't have a lot of options. That's the bottom line. Right.
You need to
So-
convert at what price?
So you can't, unless you have voluntary conversion. In other words, we said there are triggers. One of the triggers is called voluntary conversion. In other words, a trigger means something happened that triggers my conversion. You raise money, I convert.
Yes.
You sold the company, a change of ownership, I convert. You went bankrupt, you closed the company, right? I can convert. So there's also something called voluntary conversion, which means that I don't need a trigger.
Yeah.
I can convert whenever I want. If a company is not doing well, so let's say it's on its way to bankruptcy. That's not a trigger. The trigger would be bankruptcy. Right? If it's not doing well, that's not a trigger. That's not an automatic trigger. But if I have a voluntary trigger where I decide when I want to do it, then it could be that if the company's not doing well, then I'm going to trigger it, convert to equity, take a piece of the ownership, which means now I have a say in what's going on in the company. And then, okay, I'm going to kick you out, right? You know, the guy who's screwing it up. And now I'm going to take over.
Question is, at which price you convert that case?
At which price?
Yeah.
Whatever price you guys decide.
So
There's
we
no-
need to negotiate it with the founder?
We still don't have a valuation. So you can say, okay, we're going to have a forced valuation at a certain, a forced conversion at a certain valuation.
Again, because I've been in the discussion like that, and eventually we end up, in a situation when the debt is pledged against a certain amount of shares. So at the end of the day, we still have a valuation discussion because we need to understand what amount of shares should serve as a collateral against this.
So I've seen some convertible notes that have that in it, like they have a forced valuation, like a artificial valuation. Or it could be, they do, look, you know what? We expected the valuation to be $1 million. It's 500,000. We'll do it at $1 million, right? And that's it. Let's keep going. Okay, so there's not much here we want to do. Okay, let's get to the end of this. Now you have a choice. You can either get together in groups or we can go back to fund structure and finish that. Who wants fund structure? Fund structure it is. Okay. All right. So you're obvious. Wait a few minutes, right? Right. So you're all VC and you want to start a fund. How much money should you raise? How big of a fund do you want to raise? Do you want to, make? There's no right answer, right? But there are certain considerations that you can think about, right? And so the considerations would be, okay, things like, well, how many investors can you get? How much money do they have? What stage do you want to invest in, right? The earlier the stage, the less money you need. The later the stage, the more money you need, right? So that would be a factor. How many people are you going to have in the fund? How many people do you need working there? Your management fees are how much? 2%. So if your fund is 100 million, that means your budget is $2 million a year. What if your fund is $1 million? And your budget is 20,000. Can you operate a fund for $20,000 a year? Maybe yes, maybe no. So if it was $5 million, like a starter fund, a micro fund, $5 million. So $5 million, your budget is $100,000 a year. Can you run a fund for $100,000 a year? So depending on the size, it goes both ways, right? On the one hand, you say, depending on the size of the fund, the size of the fund determines how much money I have to operate the fund. Or you could say the number of people I need determines how much management fees I need, which determines the size of the fund again. Goes both ways, right? So these are all considerations that you need to think about when you're actually thinking about building a fund. The main one, I think, is how much can you actually raise, right? I mean, okay, so it's sort of like a circle. It's two-way. You can think about it in either direction. It either goes this way, up, or goes down, right? Either you think, okay, I'm starting with 100. That means I'm going to invest in A or B, or I want to start with A, and so I need at least 50 or more to get involved, right? Or any other way you want to think about it, right? So let's think about some of the ways we can think about it. So one of my friends said that how much you want to raise, it's less about math and more about the strategy of the fund, right? Because again, if I raise a $5 million fund, what's my average investment going to do? Not much. If it's not much, that means that my strategy is to invest in very, very early stage companies where I can get a considerable amount of equity, right? If I have a $5 million fund and I'm trying to invest in B rounds, nobody's going to even talk to me because the most I could put in would be $255, $100,000, and the big guys aren't going to take it. I'm not even going to be able to be part of a syndicate. So that's why my friend says, this isn't about numbers. It's more about your strategy. So you have to think about what's your strategy when you want to build a fund. And again, all of these different considerations are things that you're going to take into account, right? So if you think about it, again, if you think about the fund size, right? Fund size is the amount of capital that's committed capital. That's the total fund, right? But what do we say? We saw that there's an operational cost to the fund. And that comes out of the total committed capital. So what are you left with? You're left with invested capital, right? The amount of money that you can actually invest. So the bigger this number is, the more it takes away from here, right? Percentage-wise, it's all going to be the same, right? If I take 2% of 5 million or 2% of 100 million, from a percentage perspective, it's still 2%, right? And it's still going to add up to 10 or 15% at the end of the day. But the amount of capital is going to change, right? This ratio won't be that much different though, okay? So then you could say, if I know how much this is, and I say, okay, I'm going to put in, $6 million into each company. I don't know how many investments I can make. Or I could say, okay, 85 million, I want to put in $8 million in each company. And then I'm getting back to 10 companies in my portfolio. Right? So it doesn't matter how you see, you can go from this method, you can start at the top and work your way down. You can work from here and work your way up. Doesn't matter. You're going to end up in the same place, more or less. Okay? Obviously, when I say I want to put $8 million in a company, that's not how much I'm going to put in up front, because I have to keep money for reserves for later investments. And that's what this is. When you start a fund, you have to think about, okay, what's the total amount that I wanted to put into a company? And how do I divide that from my initial investment and then my follow-on investments? Because if you started to read the book on term sheets, which you haven't been required to do yet, right? As to do convertible debt and cap tables. We'll do cap tables next. But so when you get to term sheets, you're going to see that there are certain terms that you have to maintain your investment if you want to maintain your equity position. Right? We'll get there. In any case, when you're thinking about follow-on, so when I make my initial investment, I think everybody's great, right? You know, you get married, you think it's for life until you get divorced, right? And then, okay, it's over. It didn't work out. But I don't get married because I want to get divorced. I get married because I want it to be for life. So it's the same thing here. I made investments. Every investment I made, I thought was going to be a long-term marriage. But they don't all work out. When I do my follow-on investments, now it's a different story. Now I've lived with this woman for a while. Now I know what she's like. Now I know if I want to stay married to her or not. Now I know if it's going to be a good relationship. I have a better sense of whether it's going to be a successful relationship or not. That's the case. Then when I do my follow-on, if the company is doing well, if it really is a successful relationship, let's keep going strong. Of course, let's keep doing it. But if I don't feel that kind of confidence, then to have the allocation for it. If I decide not to, I can take that money, bring over to. For the time. So it's 5. Just a continuation of this. Stop here for now. Next week, you have a guest speaker. Cap table. And after that, we have vacation. It's something. So class. Don't go anywhere. For all you people in television land, thanks for joining us. We're going to say goodbye now. Bye-bye.